Welcome. Today we're going to discuss the technique Twin Kimono and some of the more important principles, rules, theories, concepts, and strategies within the technique. So let's start out with a concept, in this case, considerations. So keep in mind that we have a number of considerations, and the reason we have them is because they guide or help us pick the actions or the strategies that we want to employ in a technique. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on the first consideration, which is the environment. So keep in mind that the environment is defined as anything that is in, on, or around us. In this case, our opponent. So let's see how this plays out in Twin Kimono. So if you notice, we're dealing with an applied minor from the front against two of their weapons. So the interesting thing to keep in mind here is that there's three options he can do from this position. He can stay static, he can be pulling me in, or he can be pushing me away. Which brings in our next concept, purposeful versus compelled. So keep in mind there are two reasons why we do things. We want to, purposeful, or we have to, compelled. So in this case, if he's being static, we can choose what we want to do. I can be purposeful in my actions. If he was pulling me or pushing me, we are now compelled to do something different. So keep in mind that our system has techniques that deal with each of these attacks. Twin Kimono deals with the push, so that's the one we're going to be focusing on this video. So let's start out with the strategy of the technique when he pushes us. What is the major strategy of Twin Kimono? Well, we're going to control their depth zone, get off the line of attack, and then counter. So now that we've kind of covered the strategy, let's see how we actually apply the strategy. So remember, we are being compelled to step back because he's pushing. So we're going to do rule number one. We talked about consideration number one. So now let's talk about rule number one, which is to establish a base. So as he begins to push, I want to make sure I get into a good stance. Remember, we do that for three reasons: stability, mobility, and availability. But then this brings in our next concept, 1 versus 2, or the rule, never do 2 against 1, which is what they did. They used 2 of their weapons against us, so we're going to take advantage of it by doing 1 of our weapons against 2 of their weapons. The interesting thing to keep in mind here is how we're doing this, by anchoring our elbow. If I don't anchor my elbow, he has the ability to get his hand out and put us back at it 1 versus 1. So the idea is to anchor this elbow and get 1 against 2, giving us an advantage, which brings in the next concept of getting the upper hand. We're doing that both physically and conceptually. Physically, by literally putting our hand on top of their hands. Conceptually, because we now have a free weapon and they do not. Therefore, we have an advantage. Therefore, we have taken the upper hand. So let's continue with the strategy of the technique. Because even though we have their hands pinned and I have an advantage, I haven't controlled their depth zone. So what does that mean? He's still able to push and pull me. So what is the strategy? Control their depth zone. How do we do that? By using my free hand and locking up their elbows to prevent them from being able to continue to do that. So what was the next part of the strategy? Getting off the line of attack. Why? Well, if I try to counter from here, there's a couple of things that can go wrong. Number one, I don't have an optimal angle to strike with, so this is going to create a glancing angle. Number two, I've now released the lock, but I'm still in the line of attack, which means he's able to still affect me severely with his arms. So the idea is to get off the line of attack so that once I release the lock, he no longer has the proper alignments to affect me as much, and I now have a proper angle of incident so that I can deliver the strike. So keep in mind, a lot of the times we're trying to get to the end of the technique, so we're rushing. You haven't done anything to this opponent as of yet, so I don't want this to be a glancing strike. I want it to be a major. So the reason we're getting off the line of attack is so that we can get our alignments and deliver this as a major, not as a glance. We want angle of incident, which, remember, like Mr. Parker used to say, it's not fast food, it's a sit-down course. So I don't want to get to the dessert without enjoying my meal. So I want to make sure we're enjoying the meal. Once we get to the strike, we can now get our hand, once again, get the upper hand on top of their arms, and then using frictional pull to control their height, and then reversing the line using reverse motion to contour their arm and take advantage of the open-ended triangle to deliver our counter. And then this brings us to the end of the technique, where once again we are left in the middle of a fight. And this is to go back to the concept of purposeful versus compelled. You are now back to being purposeful. First, we were compelled to do something. Now we can choose what we want to do. Do you want to continue? Do you want to disengage? In this case, we're going to be disengaging. So now that we talked about the rules, principles, concepts, theories, and strategies of the technique, let's demonstrate it one time so you can see it done. Up. We hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system a little bit better. Thank you very much.